5, 6, 7, 8. It's a mess, sis. Oh, it's a mess, sis.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. It's a mess, sis. So, what exactly is a mess? A mess is a situation or a state of affairs that is confused or full of difficulties.
The mess is when things don't go the way you plan. It is when you have to go off script, improvise, ad lib, sit through the awkwardness, and breathe through the pain until you come out on the other side, because you will come out on the other side. It is everything that makes life interesting and transformative. It is what we are here to do. It is how we learn how to be.
So, join us as we dive into this week's mess. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. It's a mess, sis. This, my favorite podcast. I'm Jessica, and I'm a mess. I've spent my whole life chasing perfection, only to realize that there is no such thing. And chasing it led me down a road to misery. I now know that peace and alignment should be my goal in all that I do. Through these episodes, I've been able to explore my deepest fears and my wildest fantasies, and I hope you'll join me for the ride and do the same.
I love that.
Thanks.
All right. So, hey, everyone. My name is Rena. I'm your other co-host, and I'm just out here living. I currently reside in the DMV. I am a content producer, writer, feeler, thinker. I just like making things and being creative. I've been on my own personal self-development journey for the past few years, and I'm using this as an outlet to share what I've learned, what I've struggled with, and what I continue to absorb, because I believe that not only will it help myself, it will help others who resonate with my stories and my experiences. I'm also working to develop my vision and purpose in life, which I've narrowed down to talking, writing, and loving on people while getting paid for it, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Dope. I love that. So that is a little bit about us. And you guys are joining us for episode 35.
35?
Yes, titled I'm Looking for the Woman in the Mirror. Who is the first Black queer woman you encountered? So we're really excited about this one. This is a fun topic, and we will get into that in just a little bit. But before we do, we have a little segment called What's the Mess? So I'm going to ask Rena, what's your mess?
As always, I get to go first. So, my mess has been or is that I've been really happy.
Okay.
And I've been super anxious about it.
Tell me more.
It's like I'm worried. I'm like, yeah, I feel good. Things are happening. I have opportunities. Like I feel myself growing. I feel myself knowing more about myself. And then at the same time, I'm like panicking because I want to hold on to it. And there's like this fear creeping in, and I know better than that. I've just been having this feeling like I feel like I've learned so much from a lot of the pain I've experienced. And I don't know if I've attached that growth to the pain. So if I'm not feeling pain or I'm not feeling sad, I'm like, am I still growing? Am I still learning? Am I still connected? Because, I'm hard-headed, and the universe, likes to knock my head around because I'm hard-headed. But now the universe is like, I've asked for grace and ease. So I'm getting grace and ease. And then I'm like,
You said what?
It doesn't seem right.
Wow.
It's like I'm suspicious about it, but what I'm doing is I'm telling myself stay in the present, because things do shift. Things change, and a lot of the pain that I experienced was because I wasn't willing to flow with the changes. I wasn't willing to bend, and a lot of these changes broke me.
Ooh,
so
damn.
I'm trying to stay flexible, and I'm trying to lean into being really happy right now, because there was a time where I thought I was happy and I wasn't.
Yeah.
So the more I get to know myself, the more I can enjoy things like authentically and be like, oh, this is what joy feels like. This is what it's like to really like fuck with a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
But so I'm not trying to cling. I'm not trying to become like, because I realized I'm like, okay, that's going to create anxiety. It has created anxiety. So I've been trying to get still when I start to feel that creep up. I find
Yeah.
myself creating problems for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't fuck up this happy time for yourself.
Hmm.
Keep doing this. So that's been my mess.
Yeah.
You know, that's been my mess.
That's a really interesting perspective because I feel like a lot of us have experienced that where it's just like, okay, shit's going too right. What's next? And it's like, if you continue to live in that what's next, you'll never just be satisfied with what's now because you're happy now. What's
Right.
next is going to be what's next, regardless of whether you want it to be or can handle it. It doesn't matter. What's next is coming. So if you sit with what's now, you can fully enjoy it. And I think it's really good that you are acknowledging the anxiety that it brings you and creating a plan to sit still and say, hey, this is what's happening, and acknowledge it. I think so often we're ashamed of the emotions that we are feeling, that we try to push them aside. So I think it's really dope that you're like, okay, no, I'm feeling this and this is what I'm going to do about it. So that's awesome. That is a mess. And I hope that, you sitting still will allow you to fully enjoy what is your happiness.
It really has. It really has. I
Yeah.
have these moments where that panic will flare up, and then I'm like, you know what? You need to sit down. And I'll go sit
Yeah.
down for 15 minutes and I'll come back and I'm like, okay, I'm good. The sun is shining again. Like I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Wow, that was a really good mess. I mean, not a good mess, but it was really like insightful.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting it to come out like that either, you know. But I'm like, okay, I think I just confirmed something for myself. I'm like, oh,
It'd be like that.
okay. All right. So what about you, Jess? What is your mess?
Um, my mess this week, I kind of talked about it on Sunday's live. My mess is just reflection or reflecting. And I've been thinking over this past year and how I've grown so much, but also realizing that I still have a lot of healing to do. And
Mm.
that's okay.
Mhm.
That it's an ongoing process. And I'm allowed to experience the bevy of emotions that comes with grieving and healing. I kind of went a little more into detail on the live, like I said, but it's just, sometimes your past will come back and give you a full awareness of whether you're actually healed from something, or whether you're just busy or, yeah. So
Oh.
yeah, sometimes you just kind of moving along and you're not really, and not to say that I'm doing any of this, what I'm doing now, to busy myself, but I am busy. And so I haven't had a lot of time to focus on these kind of past situations. And so then when it presents itself again, or there's some sort of like triggering moment that brings you back to that situation, you can see what has fully healed. There are some things that I'm just totally like good on. They don't bring me any emotion. I'm just like, oh, that is what it is. And there's some things that I'm just like, oh man, that still really hurts, you know. So you have a question?
I
Yes.
do. I'm like, does being healed mean you don't feel anything at all?
Ah, well, for me, that's what I feel like it is. I don't feel like, because I mean, if you heal from a scar, if I get a cut on my hand, it's not healed if it's still hurting. There's some infection there. So when it's fully healed, the wound is sealed and there's no pain because the job is done. That hurt is to indicate that it's still healing. I'm just looking at it from a physical standpoint. If you were to get hurt or something, that pain is just an indicator that it's still healing. So for me, I've had plenty of bruises because I was a whole ass tomboy, scars and all sorts of shit. But when it's done, there's no more pain left. I may even see the scar. Let's say there's a scar there. But if I touch it and I feel it, it doesn't hurt. If I look at it, it doesn't bring painful memories. It's not like, oh no, it's just a memory. It's like, oh, I remember I fell and broke that. I have a scar on my hand from when I cut it open when I was in 6th grade and I had to go to the hospital for stitches. There's a large scar on my thumb. I can look at it, I can touch it. I remember the memory. I remember being rushed to the hospital. I remember all of it, but there's no pain attached to that memory. So for me, that feels like healing. And
Okay.
I don't know, do you feel like it's different because it's emotional or what?
because when I think about it from a physical standpoint, I think about, the injuries we get and the scars. And maybe it's just me. Like, I'll look at a scar and, like, especially, like, some of them, like the ones on my knee where I know I fell and I'll, like, really, like, busted my knee open. I'll have, like, a flinch. It's not, like, a real pain, but it's just
Okay.
kind of like I remember that. And it almost gives me, like, a little, like, you should be
Really?
careful. And then,
Okay.
like, with the scar and everything, or, it's rougher. It's not like the rest of your skin. It's like, oh, like,
Yeah.
I can feel that. I can feel the difference. But like you said, there's not a pain.
Right.
So emotionally, I just wonder sometimes if we review things, it's like, is it really pain, or is it just, oh, this feels different from the rest of, like, my experiences? Like, it's just a little rougher, or
Well,
it triggers that little,
I got you.
it's
I
like
feel
apprehension.
I feel like I can decipher the difference because I have other memories that were pretty painful in my past because I mean, who doesn't? Um, but I've since healed or what I feel like healed from them. And it is a rougher memory. It's like, ah, that was a tough time for me, or that was rough for me and that really sucked. But actual like pain and actual like that feeling of yeah pain that pain is no longer attached, so yes, I do recognize that this feeling or the feelings of whatever some of the traumas or things that you've gone through will never feel like the memory when you were your happiest. No, I'm not expecting that or expecting to feel, I guess when I said feel nothing, I meant feel pain. Because I will still feel something, you'll still have a moment or a remembering,
Mm,
but it won't be necessarily attached to the pain that is attached to it now or,
okay.
in the immediate moment. At least that's how I feel. So I don't know.
No, I think that's my point. I think it's good that you made that distinction. It's like, not that you won't feel anything.
Yeah.
It's just that there's not that pain, that little, jolt to your heart or
Yeah.
whatnot. That
Yeah.
squeeze where you're
That
like, ooh.
squeeze. Yeah, yeah. That just like, you know,
Hmm.
oh
Yeah.
God, that thing where it's like, and it can bring you back to that immediate moment of like when you were there. You're like, oh shit. But yeah, so that's my mess, and I'm working through it. I'm grateful to have people that I can talk to about it and kind of, explore and work through it really because
Mhm.
it's so interesting when you just allow yourself to feel the emotions. You can get through things a little bit easier. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my mess.
No, you absolutely can. I'm glad you said that. Like, when you just allow yourself to feel, that's really the healing. The fact that you can
Yeah.
acknowledge it and say it's there, because then you can heal it. If you were pretending it's not there, it's just going to get an infection,
Hmm.
gangrene, and all that. And then next thing you know, you're going to
Hmm.
have to sever it.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
But so that is the mess segment. I think, is that everything for you? Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm just ready to get to this topic. I'm so
Period.
excited.
Okay, so if you guys will remember, the title or the topic of this one is basically, I'm looking for the woman in the mirror. Who's the first Black queer woman that you encountered? And so I want to ask Rena, why did you want to do this topic?
Okay, so this is my topic. And
Yeah.
since it's Women's History Month, aka Women's History 24/7, 365, with a concentration in Black queer womanhood, because that is the life in which we reside.
Yes.
Yes. Um, I would just happen to be thinking to myself one day about how I grew up having so many crushes on white women.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing wrong with it. Sarah Paul said she can get it anytime.
Mm.
But, in my self exploration, I'm like, why? Why is that? And when I let it shake around in my head a bit, I realized it's because they always had more queer representation for me at a younger age. They had the L word, even though, Bet was on there. And I didn't know that she was, I
You
mean,
thought
she
she was white.
is.
She's white.
I
Yeah.
did. And
Yeah.
then when they said she was black on the show, I was like, they couldn't hire no black. This the lady from Flashdance. When did she become black? They just gonna lie, you know. So I looked her up on Google like you do, and they said, yeah, she got some black in her. I was like, oh, okay. Um, Queer
Black when
as folk.
convenient.
What'd you say?
I said black when convenient.
Whoo!
That's a whole nother topic.
Oh,
But anyway,
oh,
so they had the L word, queer
the
as
L
folk.
word, queer as folk, and shit. Even Gia, which was low key traumatic, and that's a whole different story. That had Angelina Jolie in it about you know the movie, right? About
No.
the model. Okay, yeah,
It was crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Oh wow.
So, and I just, it just had me thinking. And you know how like J. Cole said that he wished, he wasn't too young for Nia Long?
Oh,
That
yes.
line? Shit,
Oh
I
my
just
God.
wish she was queer. I
She,
just wish she was queer.
she's so
You
fine.
know? Right?
Mm.
And I realized that I did, and I still think that, the Nia Longs, the Gabrielle Unions, Melinda Williams, Regina Hall, Kelly Williams, Laura from Family Matters, they're so fine, like
Mhm.
so fine. But I didn't feel like I had license to be attracted to them in the way that I was because Black women queerness was so out of reach for me at a young
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
So just, thinking about all of that, it just made me go back and think about the first Black queer woman I saw, outside of my gay ass self.
Of course.
So that's why I thought of this topic. And I
Okay.
ran to Jess and I'm like, oh, I got one. And so why did you agree?
Well, it was a dope topic. And secondly, I felt we could be a bit more gay. I was like, we could gay it up a bit.
We could be gay. We could definitely be gay.
We can be gay a little bit more gay. But no, seriously, I thought it would be interesting to see how meeting or seeing someone who we could identify as queer and Black affected us. I thought it would be interesting, like really dive into ourselves and how, because like you said, I feel like a lot of Black queer women or just queer people in general are able to see white queer representation a lot more than Black queer representation, and so I wondered how that affected us, and so I'm really glad to kind of like dig it down.
Oh,
And
this.
speaking of digging it down, Rena is going to explain the agenda for this episode.
All right. So the agenda for this episode is the dick. As
Down.
always, is to dick it down, which stands for define, impact, and cope. So this episode, we will provide our personal definitions of a Black queer woman and name the first Black queer woman that we saw. Then we will discuss the impact of seeing Black queer women in our lives. And lastly, we talk about how we cope with our definitions and the impact of Black queer representation, Black queer women or woman representation on our lives. Another thing to note, we make each section clearly known, so feel free to pause throughout the sections to give yourself time to answer. You'll hear either Jess or I say, okay, we're at the definition, we're down to the impact, and we're at the cope. These are all suggestions. You can follow along if you want to. We've designed this podcast for you to do so. So if you feel compelled, take the time to jot down your answers and your thoughts. Simply do what feels right for you.
Lovely. So, with that being said, we are now to the definition.
Hmm.
So, what for me is queer? What is queer? So, according to my findings, which is Google, Googling it, queer is an umbrella term for sexual and gender minorities who are not heterosexual and or are not cisgender. So that was kind of on par with my own thoughts. I've always kind of thought of queer as just anything that's not straight. So when I first heard this topic, I was like a little stumped. I'm not gonna lie, because Black women being queer seemed like such a rarity in the spaces that I was raised in. I was raised in, mostly going to school and to church. And of course, various family functions and things like that. So in the Black church, you're more likely to see like a flamboyant male director of the musical department who everyone assumed was gay. Not necessarily true, but there was an assumption. You were more likely to see that than an outwardly open gay woman, at least in the churches that I went to, when I was being raised. And then so my schooling was mostly done in small towns and predominantly white communities. So the opportunity to see queer women, especially Black women, was like very small. But after sitting with it for a while, some memories about meeting some beautiful Black queer women. So my very first time seeing and interacting with a queer Black woman was, I feel like it was like the 8th grade, right? This new girl came to school and she looked like your typical basketball player, tomboy aesthetic with like cornrows to the back. She knew most of the students there because she had grown up with them. They had all grown up together, like the kind of school I went to that you would just kind of flow, you know how it is. You just flow up to elementary, middle, blah, blah, blah. So I guess she had moved away and come back. So she knew all of the kids that I knew, but I was newer to the school. So I was hanging out with these people, but she already had a rapport with these people. And so we all just kind of hung together. So in the mornings we would come in and sit together and chit chat, and we all became friendly with one another. And then she started calling me like little bit or something like that. It was just like a name that was very like playful because I was short and she was tall. So I'd call her the Jolly Green Giant. And it was just playful and silly until one day one of her friends like heard her teasing me and started doing that teasing thing where you kind of think two people like each other. And she kind of blushed and looked at me, who was sort of oblivious. I was oblivious at this time, a little bit, and was like, no, 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 we just friends. And at that moment, I was like, is there something else it could be? You know what I mean? I was like, what? I was like, okay. I moved shortly after that, so nothing ever really came of it. But that was my first like real experience. If I feel like I have to sit with it. So I count that as my technical first time. But the next story is when I started having like actual conversations with myself about what I like because of this meeting, right? So fast forward 2 years later or so, and I'm a sophomore in high school, and it's the first week back to school. I go to history class, which was my favorite class at the time, and my friend from the previous year sits down beside me. She has this 3-ring binder for those of you who was back in school in the golden ages, the dinosaur ages. We had 3-ring binders.
Don't do us like that.
Listen, they taking math books and all kind of shit to class now. I don't know what they taking. But no, we had 3-ring binders, and she had it decorated. And I just remember looking over, she had it decorated with like 1,000,001 rainbows. And at the top, in huge rainbow letters, was this word like lesbian nation. And I was like, the fuck? Like I read it, and she's all excited about it, and I'm like, what the deuce is that? Like, what is that? What does that mean? And she explains, she's like, I like girls, like I'm a lesbian, so lesbian nation. When I say I was shook, I was like, what? I felt like a myriad of ways. I was like, speechless damn near. I wasn't going to abandon my friend, but I knew that this was like wrong, and I'm saying it in quotations because at this point the church's brainwashing is like starting to take hold of me. During this exact same time, I was in a weight training class, and I promise you, I swear to you, it seemed like every girl in there was like a super stud, like super like stud. And I was so uncomfortable. I was like, I don't want to be in class with them where I have to shower and all this shit. So I transferred classes to home ec, which to be fair was a dope ass class, and I cooked some bomb ass food. But it was internalized homophobia. I realize now. I cringe now thinking about it. Yeah, it was a really interesting time. But so like all of this is kind of happening and transpiring at the same time. So back to my friend, every day she would come to class and talk about these girls who she liked, and I'd be like, wow, okay, And so eventually my mom like transferred jobs, or we moved, or something happened, and I had to start staying late after school because my mom would be picking me up and all this stuff. So anyway, this friend was staying late too. And she wanted me to start like walking with her to take these notes to these strong looking studs on the basketball team. So I did.
Not strong looking.
They look strong, bitch. And so I did. So I became kind of familiar with them, and I would speak cordially and everything, just very like lightly. At the same time, I was hanging around this boy who would like walk me to lunch and walk me to class after lunch every day. So we're just like walking back to class. And these studs who I've been seeing, just about every day after school kind of like slow down and like look directly at me. And it's so obvious. And I'm just like, oh my God. And the boy I'm walking with sees and says something about it. He's like, oh, damn, what's that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I play it off like I don't know what that could be about. But inside, I'm starting to really think about the possibility that I'm feeling some weird way about them. Right? Yeah. So during this time, my older brother had two jobs, one of which was at Long John Silver's, and I would never forget this. He was doing like the closing shift, and my family came like a little bit early to pick him up. So I was in there like talking to him, doing what little sisters do, being annoying and shit, I'm sure. And he had a couple customers like at the end that were like coming through to be done. So I'm standing at the counter, and who pulls up but these two girls from school, the same studs from the basketball team. And I just kind of did like the head nod thing, like I acknowledged that they were there, they did it back, and like they got their food and they drove off. And I just remember their cologne like wafting into the restaurant and me being like positively giddy inside, like gushing to myself, like, oh my God, they smell so good. And just thinking about them a lot, like so much, like too much. So yeah, that's my first experience that I felt like I could acknowledge, like, wow, yeah. So yeah.
That is the gayest thing I've ever heard. Not the turned on by the cologne at the Long John
God,
Silver's.
it smells so good. Oh my God.
Not while mommy and daddy are there.
They was in the car. They was in the car. Oh Lord Jesus. Whew. Yeah.
You gonna be okay?
Yeah,
You
I
gonna be
got
all right?
yeah, well, I'm
I
good.
see.
Okay,
Got
so
a
what
little
about you?
flustered.
A little
Uh,
bit. What's the definition and who is the first queer representation that you feel like you saw? Black
oh,
queer.
I feel like I don't have like such a long Bildungsroman about my first encounter with
Okay.
a Black queer woman. So let me just start with the definition, which for me it's weird to break it down because I don't think I've ever really had to break down what a Black queer woman is. So to me, a Black queer woman is a woman, cis or non, of African descent from the diaspora via the motherland who has consensual sexual practices that fall outside of heteronormative ideals.
Love it. That's a
Right.
beautiful definition.
Thank you. Would you say that again? I think,
I'm not. Oh, say it again for real.
yeah, because it cut out.
I thought you just wanted me to say you was right. I was like, look at you. I said that's a beautiful definition.
Thank you. That's what I thought you said. I just wanted everybody else to hear it.
Wow.
We want to be clear.
True.
Okay. Now, the first Black queer woman that I saw was Cleo. Queen Latifah is Cleo and set it off. For real, for real.
That's hilarious.
And the first Black woman that I really felt like, say it was Wanda Sykes when she came out as being like gay with her white family. Um,
The shade of it all.
yeah, I was like, yay! Oh,
Oh, wow.
dang, they really white. Anyway, but like hearing you talk about your experiences, like I feel like it took me a while to find like real queer Black women outside of TV. So now I'm just kind of quickly thinking about it, like what I saw growing up. Like I saw Black queer women, I saw like masculine presenting Black women, but they never said anything. Or even if you approach them and be like, hey, you they wouldn't cop to it. So that's kind of the mind frame where I feel like it could be confirmed.
Yeah.
Because maybe you're just like an aggressive looking woman. Maybe you're just like you look like your daddy or something.
Wow.
And I don't want to assume.
True.
Maybe you share clothes with your husband. People do that.
Do they?
I've seen it happen.
You share clothes with your husband?
I don't have a husband.
Oh, okay. So you just making shit up.
No, I've seen this.
Who share clothes with their husband, Rena?
Right. They weren't.
You're ridiculous. Look at you. Is this a story you wrote? People do not be sharing clothes with their husband.
I have to.
You're right. Life is weird. But you're right. We don't want to assume.
You've never seen that couple where they dress just alike.
No.
Like they got the same jean shorts, the same t-shirt tucked in, the same New Balances.
I've not seen them. Take a picture next time you see it.
Oh, I will. I will.
Okay.
I will.
So okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Because I always have a question. So with me not really being able to like, I feel like all my representation came from TV. Your representation came from real life, and it's not that I didn't have that representation. Like I said, it just wasn't confirmed. So is it enough? Like, is that enough representation? Just the assumption that somebody could be queer, is that enough? Like, or do we need them to say it? Like Queen Latifah. You know?
I mean, to Queen Latifah's point, she shouldn't have to say it. She should be able to live her life. But
I
on the other hand, as a young person growing up, to hear the words, because there was another there. So yeah, there was a long process of me kind of coming into terms with, the verbiage, the terminology. What is it that I like? What don't I like? To have other women articulate that and to play it back in my mind and let it sit with me, it was definitely useful versus just an assumption, because that means nothing. You could assume so much about somebody and be completely inaccurate, and so you still have a lot of this questioning and stuff. So for me, I do feel like it's important to have some representation that's just loud and proud about it, so that you can, especially for those of us coming from a shamed background. There's a lot of us in the queer community who come from churches that have told us that we're, wrong and going to hell, and a variety of ways to tell you that your existence shouldn't be. So then to have no one verbalize it, it makes you feel like perhaps that is correct, since is everyone ashamed of it? Is everyone, is it something to be ashamed of? So I think seeing people come and say it loud and proudly and not feel any ways about it, I think it makes it easier for you to come to terms with yourself. Like, okay, well, she loves herself. That can't, you know what I'm saying? Just to see that, especially at such an impressionable age, I think it is nice to have somebody say it aloud. I don't know. What about you?
Um, I mean, I get what you're saying, because I really do. Like, I definitely, subscribe to that thought of, why do I have to say it? Straight people don't have to say it. They just show up with babies, you know?
Right.
Um, but also, like, when Debrat finally came out with her girlfriend, like, after
Yeah.
all these years, it brought, like, a huge smile to my heart. I was like, yay, finally,
Yeah.
yes, with your love, go.
Yeah.
With y'all matching J's and everything. Yes,
Right.
and I'm not asking for you to like be out and like just gay, 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 like just rainbow everything. But if they ask a question or something, like, yes, that's my partner. Like it's just like the sidestepping. It's like, just, I get that you don't want to have to make this grand gesture or this like declaration to the world, but they're like, hey, is that your fiance? Yup.
Yeah.
And just keep it moving.
Yeah, and I think we're coming from a place of privilege too, if you think about it. Where we are in the world, it's easy and more acceptable to just say, "Yep," Whereas, how many repercussions could you have had for saying "Yep" back in the day? And a lot of these people are famous, so what kind of roles are you going to be getting? What kind of opportunities are you going to miss out on for just being yourself? And also like housing, even people that are not in the public eye, just thinking about how dangerous it was if you live in a small town to say, yep, this is my partner. How many people are going to protect you if people harass you on the street with your partner? Even myself, when I got into my relationship, don't ask, don't tell was still a part of the military heavily, and my ex was in the military. So when we were in our town where we lived, where the base was, we couldn't do a lot of PDA. We couldn't do a lot of those things in order for her to continue to have her job. You know what I'm saying? So, and then when we would go to other smaller towns to visit, it's like, are we safe? We don't want to be the targets of crime and things like that. So I do understand the feeling of not being fully comfortable just saying this is who I am. So I want to give a voice to that as well. But I do recognize, as a Black queer growing up with so much self-doubt about it, having other people be proud it would have helped tremendously to not struggle so much with my own identity. So I don't know. That's a tricky one.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely correct. So I do thank you for pointing out the privilege,
Mm-hmm.
that we do have now. Because, it's easy to forget that
Mm-hmm.
now. I mean, Trump tried to bring us back to that,
Mm-hmm.
but um, we managed to just kind of slide under
Yeah.
with that as he slid on out.
You're right.
Impeached. Anyway, so yes, sometimes I do need that reminder of the privilege that we have. And then also while you were talking, I was just thinking about, we're asking Black women to add like an extra layer to, an already stacked pile. It's hard enough to have these opportunities to be a cover girl as a Black woman, a plus size Black woman at that. And then it's like, oh, you want me to be gay too?
That's a lie. Right.
She know I'm gay. I know she gay. We know each other. That's all y'all need to know.
Right.
So I get it. I do get it. But like I said, like that representation would have been helpful. And I think that leads us into the impact, does it not?
It does. It does. So for me, I think the impact of these encounters were huge. The impact is that I saw myself. The impact is that I felt feelings I didn't know possible. And I think the most obvious impact was that I'd been broken out of this mental prison I had been in or that was built around me. I mean, maybe not all the way, but it created a small crack which allowed me to see myself just a little bit. It took another year and another run-in with a woman who came out to me as bisexual for me to realize who I was. And here we are. I think representation is so important because I'd always had these feelings, but not being able to see it in the world on people who looked like me kind of kept me in a certain frame of mind for a very long time. I was ashamed, thinking that I was weird and, of course, an abomination. And seeing these girls be so confident in who they desired opened me up to the possibility that I too could have all that I desired. I think the impact was that I was given the green light to exist in the world just as I was. So the impact was incredible.
That was powerful. That really was.
Yeah. How about you? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, before, I always got something to say.
Okay.
But just listening to you talk, it makes me think about like bisexual representation. I automatically default to like lesbian representation because that's what I feel aligned to at this moment. And, and we're a queer podcast, Black queers, and queerness is that umbrella. But I feel like when it comes to being bi, like I don't think I saw like people coming out as bi until like more recently. Like I didn't see that in childhood at all. Wow. Where I think Anne Heche was the only one. I was like, oh, you left Ellen to be with a man? What? Wait, but you was with a man before? So you left a man to be with Ellen and you went back to a man? Like I just thought, you just went one way. I didn't think, you could have both.
That's interesting. And now I'm recognizing my own privileges in the representation that I had as early as I did. Because I always felt like I was behind the curve. Like when I got to college, there were these girls that had like gay families and they had all this gay understanding. And I was like, what the fuck is all of this shit? So I didn't have that. What college did you go to? I went to a small liberal arts college.
Was it a predominantly institution?
Yeah. Okay. But I was hanging out with the Black queers that were there, and this is who the people were telling me that they had like gay families and this and this and this. And I was like, okay, I have no experience. But I guess, hearing you talk, I did have a lot more representation of variety of things in my life. And the way the bisexual girl explained it to me, she was like, sometimes I like a little something hard, sometimes I like a little something soft. And I was like, wow, that makes total sense in my head. I was like, yes, I get it. So representation is key to just even seeing that there is language around your feelings. You know what I'm saying? It's so important. It's so important.
I live for that definition, by the way. Sometimes you want something a little hard. Sometimes you want a little soft. And I think that's dope that you did have such a diverse, encounter and experience with just Black queerness.
Like I was my cousin.
Oh, okay. So your family. Okay, run in the family.
Oh yeah, there's so many gay people in my family. So gay. So gay.
And they're out about it. They say it. Okay.
I can see. I be seeing them. I'm like, But I mean, a lot of my family's still in the South, still in the church. One of my cousins was like, she told me one time that she thinks about women when she's having sex with men. She watches gay porn or like lesbian porn. I was like, baby, you whole ass gay, but okay, you know what? Or you queer. Something's happening. That's not typical. Is what I don't know, but I don't know what the fuck is typical because I'm not typical. So, but yeah, I was just looking at her like that sounds real gay, but okay.
This the okay for me. It's the Whoopi Goldberg.
Period.
Okay.
Okay.
I clearly watch way too much TV. I think I'm starting to realize like maybe I just wasn't socialized, period, as a child. Well, okay, dang, it was supposed to be that damn sad.
Damn.
Okay. Shit.
Only child syndrome.
Only child. I mean, let me get to my impact.
Okay, yeah. What's your impact? Tell us.
The impact. It's just gonna confirm what I just said. I didn't see many queer Black women.
Yeah.
Wait. Wait. Let me clean that up. I saw or suspected, but no one said anything. So that's what we've been talking about. I was always kind of like, is you? Are you? Ain't you? Lip wrist. Like.
You're so stupid.
And I have cousins that I suspected. Shit, I am that cousin that my family suspects. So the lack of representation caused me to retreat into myself. I felt like I should be silent, and that spread into more areas of my life than just my sexuality. It wasn't something you spoke about or said out loud. You could look the part, but just don't say anything. Let people assume, but don't you dare define, confirm, or affirm your position or preference, I should say. And that caused me to not seek out information.
Yeah.
If I stumbled upon it, cool. But to search, I was asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And I felt limited in my movements, in my expression, and in my knowledge of myself. And I know now that I shouldn't have been looking for permission outside of myself, but it would have helped to see women that look like me giving themselves permission, and maybe that could have been a signal for me to go and just be, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
And I also think I was afraid of Black women for a long time because of the lack of representation. I feel Black women, are strong in a way. I feel like we are the gatekeepers to Blackness. Air quotes, fully gatekeepers. Air quotes, fully fucking implied, because the concept of Blackness as a singular, succinct thing is so stifling.
It is.
And that's another episode entirely.
Right.
But I didn't want to disappoint Black women, and since I really saw Black queer women, and ones that stood in it, I just felt like I was hanging out around the gates, hoping to get in, and then fearing getting put out.
Damn. Yeah, wow. It's so interesting because, like I was saying earlier, it's not anyone's duty to come out. And I recognize that, but just the impact of seeing it. If you can see it, you can be it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad and grateful for this new generation having so much representation in like a myriad of different ways. I guess that's my word for the day, myriad. But in such a variety of ways, like, you have so many Black queer, you have the trans Black woman, you have, the non-binary, you have all these things that are actually being represented, and people can see themselves and put names to it and feel validated and feel heard. And not to say that there's not any struggles behind these things anymore, but just to have that understanding that I am not alone, piece is really, really needed, in who we are as human beings. We need to know that, like, okay, I'm not like an alien. Like I somebody else understands and feels me, and I'm going to be okay to see successful people looking like you, being like you is so tremendously helpful.
To see thriving people who look like you, who you can identify. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I have a question.
Okay.
Because I always have a question.
Tell me.
So, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of my representation came from TV. You had representation that came in real life. Do you feel like there's a difference? Do you feel like, it's TV representation is all you need? Or do you feel like, having real life people that you interact with in your life, that does it make a difference? Is it more impactful?
Mm. Um, I don't know. I think if you don't have anything, then TV representation is huge. Because there's a lot of people who live in small towns who they're just not going to see it in their town.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing it somewhere is better
Mm-hmm.
than seeing it nowhere. There's so many people who felt
Mm-hmm.
saved and felt seen and felt so many things by media and artists being representative for the communities that they feel like they fit into. So I'm not going to belittle one over the other. I think if it helps you get your liberation, it doesn't matter where you got it from. I felt it in person, and so that made it very real for me. But I think even if just seeing it aloud in TV and seeing it aloud in TV in a positive way would have been as helpful. But I don't know. That wasn't my first experience. So I can't say for sure. But I feel like if you have nothing, something is better than that.
I vibe with it. I just asked
Yeah.
a question. I didn't really have an answer.
Well, go on,
Uh,
try to answer it now. I believe in you. You can do it. What you
No,
think?
I agree with you. I agree. Some representation is better than none. I also feel like though media at times can seem out of reach.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be that feeling of, oh, that I see it, that's good to know,
Yeah.
and I can recognize that in myself, but maybe that's good for them.
Okay.
Maybe I feel like seeing somebody in real life and seeing somebody who stands in it and they're working, like you said, and they're thriving, and you see a real person who's just walking around, you're like, oh, okay, I
Yeah.
can do this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. I can see that. But I think that's a legitimate and valid point. I do think, however, that even if you see and you're like, that's good for them, you at least have the acknowledgement that it is a thing.
No, I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I totally agree. I feel like they're both needed,
Yeah.
but if you don't have that because small towns and because, discrimination, homophobia, and all of that, having it shown, period, in a positive light and not like boys don't cry traumatic way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is really akin to like, slave movies. Oh, I'm gonna get something for saying that.
Yeah. Wow.
Saying that. I mean, it's not.
How's your feelings? But I understand what you're saying. You're just saying
It's
it's like trauma porn.
yeah. It's just traumatic. I'm not saying like they're the exact same thing. It gives you that same feeling. When I watch Boys Don't Cry, it was like ah, I don't want to do that. I don't want that to happen to me. And I'm not even like a trans person, so I'm just like that's what they doing out here.
Yeah.
That is what's happening.
Yeah.
Um, So, and that's the same way I feel it when I see these slave movies and we're being lynched and whipped. I'm just like,
Yeah.
it's a source of trauma. So to have a positive depiction, something that doesn't mean you're going to get gutted.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important.
Very, very. I have to agree with you. I have to agree with you on that one. But I think that brings us to our cope. How do we cope with these understandings? And I'll start. I cope by working to be confident in all aspects of my being, in hopes that I can be the queer, Black, plus size, talented force that someone needs to see in order to live more freely in themselves. We don't know why we're put here, so I feel like the least we can do is enjoy it as we are. I cope by being grateful to all those Black queer beauties who showed me a freedom I couldn't imagine for myself.
I love that.
Thanks. Yeah. What about you?
Oh,
How you coping?
I realized that I need to be the change I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a lot of requests of other people.
Mm.
And, I feel like if you have an issue, then that's your issue. You should do something about it. And I believe that I am doing that with this podcast, with even talking about this right now.
Yeah.
And I just realized I need to be honest, give myself permission to be me as I am, queer and all.
Yeah.
And that's how I cope, by getting to know
Mm.
myself, leaning into who I am, what I desire, and what I believe, and what brings me joy.
That is incredible. I love that. I love that. I feel like we both kind of got to that place. Did you have any other questions?
No, I
You'd be having
don't.
some. I do. Do you feel like
Oh,
we're in
dang.
a better place for representation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
Mhm.
It's definitely, like I said, a lot more positive.
Mhm.
The representation I had, um, was queer as folk, which was messy as fuck.
Mhm.
The L word, which, Bet was there. And
And her sister who was on drugs.
Pam Grier, right. And I feel like, don't get me started on that. I feel like why'd she have to be on drugs? To make
Right.
her seem black,
Right.
and then, she had the black daddy who was like, you
Right.
know, it was a lot. It was a lot. But then Boys Don't Cry was also the representation I had, which was like,
Mhm.
Gia. Wish I never saw that. And then, like, we had, it was it Matthew Shepard, like everything
Mhm.
that went down with him, and even in all of that, so little black queer representation.
Yeah.
So as I got older, I started to see more black queer representation. All the people with the YouTube series, like, shout
Mhm.
out to y'all. Noah's
Yeah.
Ark, like, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, logo,
Right.
black people,
Right.
RuPaul's Drag Race,
Right.
and it's just something that's lighthearted and
Mhm.
positive, and it just makes you feel like you're not gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important. I'm really grateful for, social media as well.
Yes.
Seeing positive queer couples, black queer women loving on one another. I there's this on my For You page on Instagram, there's this couple, one of them's pregnant now, and she it's just so beautiful to see. She like teases her wife and brings her food, and her wife's always like, what's that? It's just so cute to see, black love in
Mhm.
queer form represented in such a positive light. And I think, like I said, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think that is so helpful for all of us, not even just the younger generation, which I'm so glad they have, but even for us older folks. And I'm saying older, but those of us who are older millennials, and just seeing that representation, it's just so beautiful. And I want to be a part of that.
Mhm.
It's just so dope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there
Yeah.
anything else you wanted to add before we get to the recap?
No, I think I'm just sitting here just really thinking about it, just thinking about how much more exposure we have now, and just
Mm.
the way it's shown, and like just that lighthearted, nature.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, yeah, I like that. That's
Yeah.
that's needed.
It
That's very
is.
much needed.
It is. Well, then I guess that brings us to the recap. So, to recap, it seems that representation is the key to unlocking misguided truths and gives freedom to just exist. To see someone who looks like you living freely in their truth gives permission for you to do the same. So, both Rena and myself are doing what we can to be proud representatives to those who may need to see one. And this has just been such a fun episode. Like, it was so fun to kind of go back and explore those memories of where I saw myself in others for the first time, in that way. And so that leads me to my shout out. Shout out to those women who were so understanding of themselves at such an early age and were able to kind of express that and explore that. It gave me an insight into my own self and helped me be as queer as I am now. And so I'm super grateful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Any shout outs for you? Are you good?
I just want to shout out to everybody who's living in their truth, and, and living well, like, you know, thriving out there, doing the work to thrive.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's not really about you saying it. It's just you being you,
Hmm.
and interacting with others, being in relationship with others, and just being a solid version of you that you love,
Yeah.
because, people are watching,
Hmm.
and they see that.
Yeah.
So, so even though Queen Latifah hasn't said it, I see you, sis.
I see you, sis.
I see you, sis.
Oh my God. I want to do a whole thing on her because she was my first representation of like plus size just being so fucking dope and just she had big titties like I got big titties and I was just like, oh my God, I can be where she is. Anyway.
Titties
I
and
love
all.
her. Titties and all. But that leads us to our meditation, which if you're new, you'll come to find is my favorite part. What we do is we take a couple deep breaths. We set an intention for the day. We take another couple breaths, and then I let you go for the day. So what I would like you to do is take a big deep breath with me. We'll take a second deep breath. And we'll take our last deep breath. And now we'll set our intention. My intention is to continue to be representative of all facets of myself so that the people around me can see that and feel inspired by it.
And my intention is just to continue to be me and to love myself every step of the way and let that light shine out.
I love that. I love that. We'll take our last set of breaths. Take another big deep breath with me. We'll take a second deep breath. We'll take our last deep breath. All right, your intentions have been set for the day. Go out there and flourish this. Today doesn't have to be a mess.
But it's okay if it is.
So Liz, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. Continue to be like our listeners, continuing to explore with us and share with us and all the good, beautiful things. We are so appreciative of your continued support. It is so dope and makes this so much fun and so worthwhile.
Yeah, we love you guys for real. Be sure to check out our after podcast, which we've moved to Mondays. It's still the same time slot, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I don't know why it's taking me so long. I was struggling. And that will be Monday. So this episode airs. Oh my gosh, don't get me to line. When does this episode air? Look at my calendar. This episode airs on the 18th. So then our after podcast would be on the 21st of March. That's a few days before my birthday. So if you want to come and like chop it up with us, talk about the first Black queer woman that you encountered, let us know your experiences, just hang out with us.
Yeah.
What did you say?
I said we'd love to hear it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So is there anything else that we need to let the people know?
Not right now at this moment. We got stuff in the works,
We'd
rather show you than say it.
Period. But keep a lookout. And so until next time, we're gonna catch y'all on the flip side. Peace.
It's a mess.
Hey, that's why I
It's a
can't
mess.
sing.
It's okay. He's gonna talk over my singing though. Okay, it's ready now.